computer. Okay, ladies. Well, thank you very much for joining me tonight. We are going to have ourselves a little panel. We're going to talk about the Women's Half Marathon Training Group with the TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon. I have a lovely little panel of people with me tonight. Heather Gardner is joining me to co-chair this little evening together. Heather is, of course, from Kardia. We have Joan Broto here with us, and we also have Mandy Mundell, and both of them are participants in the program. We're going to talk all things, how it's going, where it's going, what things are looking like. We're going to have some hard truths tonight. All cards on the table, right, ladies? All right.
That's right. It.
Okay, so let's start with some introductions. Heather, I'm going to actually let you go first. Maybe you can talk about your veteran status and where you're coming from, and then we'll throw to the ladies.
Yeah. So my name is Heather Gardner, and I live here in Toronto. I am the founder of Kardia, which is one of Toronto's inaugural run crews. I have done 15 marathons, which is my first marathon was back in 2010. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. And I was part of this training program through Canada Running Series, just an interest once I heard some stats that maybe we'll share in a bit about women running and running the marathon. And spoiler alert, how few women actually have been running the marathon. That really inspired me to take some action and get involved a little bit more with CRS and this panel. And that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you for making time to do this, Heather. And then we have our ladies. So Mandy, I'm going to let you go first. You're in my lower left corner.
So I'm Mandy. I'm living in downtown Toronto. And I think from the reason in joining this program was really just trying to find like-minded people. So it goes beyond the individuals or the people, but looking more like on the women's side. So I've always been involved in sport, always like a variety of them, but the perceptions are still male dominated. So it was trying to look for female like-mindedness. And where else do you find a community? It was also in close-ish proximity, and the fact that it was online, social media, there was the balance of interaction, but also independence. And that was just something I enjoy. And I suppose just from a little bit of a background, as I say, I've always participated in a form of sport, not always good, but always willing to give something a try. And you'll hear a bit about the journey, I'm sure, as we unpack this, but done over like 30 or 40 halves. And I thought there was a time to consider a full. So let's do this.
Good for you. That's very brave, Mandy. I love that. Great start. Okay, Joan, you're up.
So I'm Joan. I also live in Toronto. I definitely have attended some of Heather's classes at Kardia, especially when it's Beyonce Day. I think I started running just a few years ago. This is going to be my first marathon. I've done only a couple of halves, sprinkled in 5Ks here and there kind of thing. There's a bit of background, I guess. I'm a mom of 2 teens right now. And yeah, so I'm just very excited to be joining this group. I think similar to Mandy, it's having that community, having that support. I also run with Chicks Run the Six group. So
yay, love the chicks. That's awesome. Okay, Joan, don't mute your microphone right away, because I'm going to go to you next. With one of the questions I asked you guys to think about, just to get the good energy and the good vibes flowing, is what is a really positive, great memory you have from any race you've run in the past, just something that sticks in your mind as one of those happy, warm, fuzzy feelings?
So I thought about this. It's not actually, does it have to be the one that I ran in or no? Okay, because one of the best ones was last year at Scarborough 5K. So it's a local run. I actually volunteered, during that run, and the best core memory was like when all of the volunteers, there's like community ambassadors who kind of cheered the last runners through the finish line. I will always remember that. It was just the best, just to see everybody getting together, cheering, making sure all of the runners till the very end are supported. I'm also I'm a back of the pack runner. Like I'm always the ones who are like towards the end, when I've had like all the closing trucks sort of pulling behind me. So it's always great to see when you see the support for all runners, not just the front of the pack or middle of the pack.
Love it. First of all, I call it party pace. So we're party pace, Joan, you and
There
I.
you go.
Yeah. And Scarborough 5K. Love it. Love it. Love Melanie. That's such a great event. Okay, Mandy, you're up.
So mine's slightly different. So if the accent wasn't a giveaway, I am actually from South Africa originally. So taking it back to my roots, it would probably be honestly my first, it's two races, but they combined into a story, would be my first 10 and first 21K. So it's going back about 10 years ago. And it's a friend of mine that, dear friend, who said to me, I'm recovering from an ankle injury. Please come join me on a run. And it was a race. And I said to her, there's no ways I can do this. I've never run 10Ks like competitively, like in my life. How do I do this? And she said to me, just stick with me, just trust the process. I'll get you through it. I'm recovering from an ankle injury and just stay with me and you can do this. Believe in yourself. And the reason that it sticks with me is I did exactly what she said. And it was like such a special race because it showed me what the encouragement of an individual can do for you and that support that went through it. And I do not joke. 2 weeks later, she's like, yep, we're doing 21Ks. I said, sorry, 10 to 21 is a little bit of a jump. Can we maybe talk about this? And she said, do you trust me? I got you through the 10K. I believe you can get through your 21. And let's say we went through, we did it exact same thing. And it formed probably the foundation of the best friendship that ever happened. And I've said to this day, her and I, like we matched each other's pace, we matched each other's respect. We had that balance of go ahead, just keep an eye distance. And it's given me the foundation of how to treat, when I say new runners, but not be like demeaning or, oh, how do you do this? It was just such a clever way of how she approached it. And the two relate to each other. And it's always been a race memory because it sticks so core of A, you can put your mind to it, B, have a little bit of foundation and belief, but C, the support system. And it ties into what Joan was saying. It's an encouragement and the people on the course with you. And for me, that's just the two memories.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was going to say, that both of those things have in common that like idea of how we work together to be better. And also, Mandy, some of the best race memories are started by peer pressure. I'm just throwing that out there, at least mine. Okay, Heather, how are you possibly going to pick? You've done a zillion races.
Well, I'm going to build off of the peer pressure and work together to be better. So my first marathon was the New York City Marathon in 2010. I decided for some reason that I wanted to race the New York City Marathon, and my sister was in university, and I said, Nancy, we are going to race the New York City Marathon together. So she had, no interest. She was not a runner. She was just finishing school, finishing her degree, and through peer pressure, I was like, we're gonna do this, and we did. And back in 2010, we didn't have like cell phones, so I had like a flip phone in one pocket and like a Nokia camera in the other one. So I'm like running with a camera and coming through the finish line in Central Park. And similar to Joan, you have all the fans and all the spectators cheering you on. And to do that with my sister was just so special and will just be a moment that I'll never forget. And New York has been a race that I've gone back to year after year. It was also my 15th marathon in 2022. So it was my first marathon and my 15th marathon, but just racing with my sister and having the community there was just so special. Your first marathon, whether it's a high or hopefully not a low, but something you'll never forget.
Heather, I said this to you when you told me originally that that was your first marathon, that you set the bar way too high. Right? That's a high bar that you're going to have a hard time reaching again, but I know you have. Well, one of the other questions I had for you guys, which kind of ties in, I know Mandy, you talked about it a little bit when we first started about why you joined the group. So maybe I'll ask you, Mandy, then what were kind of some of your hopes and aspirations, or what were you hoping would come from being part of this group, deciding to commit to running a marathon, all those things? What were your kind of hopes to get that started?
So to answer the first part was in joining the group, as I mentioned earlier, was trying to find a group of like-minded people. So it boils down to, I suppose, personality. And I'm not one that always enjoys training in a group, because I do get caught up a little bit in a competitive nature. So when you're starting to hear or you're trying to look at like the volumes people are training, and it gets a little bit too competitive in those environments. So if we look at some of the run clubs are here, they're running 26Ks. And yes, you should perhaps do that, but I'm a firm believer in listen to your body. Sometimes you can't do that back-to-back weekends, but it doesn't mean you still won't be a success. So trying to find something like this group was A, trying to get that balance. B, as I say, I'm a bit more of an individual. So I was looking for support, encouragement, camaraderie, but not necessarily only just found on the road. And whilst there are groups that you can find on the road, I'm like, is there really a bond and a like-mindedness that comes through? And a group like this has the opportunity to engage with the veterans like a Heather, who can share that wisdom and that knowledge, but then also engage with like a Joan who's going on this journey for her first time. And yeah, as I say, maybe it is easier to hide behind Facebook and you can just read some of the comments, or I just found it was a way not to get caught up in the panic and the stress and, oh, I'm not doing this, and why don't I have my nutrition correct? And a lot of the time when the forum's too large, there's too many opinions, and you start going, who do I listen to? What do I take? Everyone's got their different view. And in a way, I found this as a safe environment, and you can filter out and accept what you felt resonated without the pressure of 40 voices coming at you whilst you're trying to run.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's an advantage too of, like, not the elephant in the room, but the fact that it's all female, right? There's a level of the removal of the broing or maybe the mansplaining. I'm just throwing that out there, right? Having a group like this is creating a bit of a safe space for us in that regard. So, Joan, what about you? Why did you decide to join the group? What were you hoping for?
I think it's very similar to what Mandy's saying. Having that support is important to me, and being a part of like a community. And I like that, again, Mandy, I'm stealing your words here. Like, it's not like such a big group. Sometimes there's groups, it's like thousands of people. I think that gets really overwhelming. For me too, like I think it kind of cemented my commitment that, holy cow, I am running my first marathon here. And, it took me a while to even like say it out loud that, yes, I'm doing it. So like being a part of this, I feel like, okay, I am doing it. And it's just been really nice to see like, some of the resources that's been shared and things like that. And knowing that there's people out there that I can ask, like Maggie said, questions, and not getting, mansplained, or not getting like 20 million different answers. So
Yeah, Heather, what do you think is the advantage? Like when, you found out about this group taking place, what did you think was going to be the magic or the special sauce in having a space like this for women?
Well, I think what's already been shared has definitely was one of the goals. The fact everybody's training for the same race, so working together, having the same experiences, but having them within their own physically same space or convenient space. And so, although, even at Kardia, we have our weekly runs, there's still the opportunity that, maybe your schedule doesn't align or it doesn't work out. So you're able to take this program and then fit it into your life the way that it fits in to get it done. Because, let's face it, 4 months of training, it's tough. And that's what I say to a lot of people. Sometimes the hardest part is managing your schedule. And when we originally in 2023 had our first panel about this in person, we looked at what were some of the barriers for women, and whether it was, jobs, families, other types of commitments. It was tough for everybody to find that balance whatever it is for you. Each person in the group has their own unique situation. And, that means maybe sometimes we've heard from folks in the Facebook group who are training at 5 a.m., the 5 a.m. club, because that's what works for them. But that's not going to work for everybody. So how can we take this one program, but try to make it accessible for everybody's schedule? And that was really the goal. And so hearing Joan and hearing Mandy talk about how they are feeling that and experiencing that is really great, because that was the goal. And then pulling in experts. So, Mandy talked about how if you're just in a random Facebook group, you can get people and you don't know their experience at all. But the benefit of this group is that the experts who are sharing are from the Toronto community, are professionals in their fields, are not just random keyboard warriors who maybe saw a TikTok and now all of a sudden they're, starting a run club. They are leaders, professionals, scientists, educators who are respected in the community, and they're the ones who are sharing their expertise. So even though we still encourage everybody to make it their own, it's coming from a place of science and educated knowledge.
Absolutely. Do you think that there's a component of it with it being women only that makes it different in some way?
I think it definitely makes it more relatable. Being a woman running in Toronto or running wherever folks are, safety is a big thing, and that was one of the things that we heard. And so that's where the idea of running in groups, and so in support with this program, there are group runs that are available for folks who can make the time, and the geography, being able to balance schedules. It's really tough. I'm sure, Joan, you said that you have, I think, two teenagers. So looking at family schedule, whether you have pets, you have dogs that need to go for a walk, you have, multiple jobs, you're trying to figure out your own life in addition to now taking on a marathon. We all only have 24 hours in the day. So how do we make it all fit? And I think women being able to share similar experiences, other moms are able to connect, other business folks are able to connect, and people are able to share how they make it work. And hopefully it's a little bit more relatable.
Yes. So with all this said, ladies, let's talk about how is it going? So we're about halfway in. Joan, I'm going to ask you first, mother of two teenagers, which is a marathon in and of itself, but how is it going so far?
So it's been going. It's going. I'll leave it at that. I'm actually enjoying the process, believe it or not. I think it's incredible for me to see myself like, whoa, I'm like this month or whatever, or this week, I actually ran this much, which, in the past would never have happened. I think like Heather saying, time management is definitely tough. Like I do have to get up early just to get the run done. And of course, with the increase in like time or mileage, it's taking more time now, right? And just making sure that I can fit that in. It's sort of, for my schedule, it's easier for me to run in the mornings rather than in the evenings, because then I have to do a bunch of other things. So I think managing time has been tough. I'm making it work, which is good. And I don't know if we'll talk about this later too, but I've also had to deal with some injuries just the past month. So that hasn't been, the best. But again, I am enjoying the process. I love seeing how it's going. And yeah, it's going. It's going.
It's going is sometimes all you can ask for.
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially with that distance. As long as it just keeps going forwards and you
Yeah.
just keep going forwards, one step in front of the other, forward is a pace, just keep moving forwards. One of my favorite dad jokes that I like to say with our new runners is always, after their longest run, it's like, that was your longest run ever. And then next week, that was your longest run ever. And then next week, that was your longest, like, okay, I get it. But it's just like like, I still remember what it felt like for me to have that. Oh, that was my longest run. And now as a coach, as I'm working with new runners and our, even our race team who are going faster, it's just like that, the celebrating those little successes is so important. And the fact that you did it and you made the time and you got it done to the best that you could, and just continuing to be grateful for your body and what it can do. And it's not just about running a marathon. You might have already started to figure that out now, but it's building confidence and it's building resilience. And you feel uncomfortable sometimes, but you push through, and that's life. In life, you feel uncomfortable and you got to push through. So great job so far.
Good job, Joan. Gold star. Excellent work. Okay, Mandy, how are you doing?
So I feel like Joan set the bar very high and gave the fantastic view of how it should be going. I think I'm going to become a bit like the reality setter and say, it's going better. We hit a massive slump and a lot of questioning. Am I doing this? I must be honest. So some background is this is my third attempt of trying to get to a marathon start. So I've got a little bit of a mental block against it. And it's probably been one of the toughest things. Like I went out probably at the wrong time, June in the heat wave, cursed every run, every step, and came back and was like, why am I doing this? This is supposed to be fun. I'm not enjoying it. And that little bit of doubt started to creep in. So transparently, I probably took about 3 weeks off, and I still kept up with the cross training. So I would go either to gym or to cycling. So there was still fitness going, but I started to resent running, that I was like, this is not going to actually help my process. So after I gave myself a little bit of a reality check and a hard pep talk, I thought, okay, we've got to redo this. So I'm glad to announce, back on track. And we are back on the straight and narrow. But yes, it hasn't been sunshine and roses. I've got, as I say, like a mental block of getting there. On one occasion, unfortunately, was COVID that got the better of me. The second time was a broken ankle. So it wasn't any like ways I could get back to it. And I suppose there's this little bit of fear that's sitting with me as I up the mileage. Am I going to push myself? Am I going to get sick? Am I going to lead to injury? So yes, I'm pushing. Yes, for me, it's beyond the distance. I know physically I can do that. I'm now wrestling with the mental battle. And that sounds so dramatic, but it's honestly what I'm going through at the moment. So we're on track, but cautiously. So less sunshine and roses. And sorry to be negative Nancy.
No, it's real. We have to be real. That's the thing. It's not always going to go as planned. And believe me, on my 15 training plans, I don't know if they ever all went as planned. Like life happens, and it's, just choosing grace. And you took a moment and you stepped back. Being able to have our goals in mind, the reason why, right? So on those days, and I know it's a little bit different, but I've done a few half Ironmans. So I talked about how I got my sister marathon running. Well, then my sister reversed it and got me doing a half Ironman. So she got paid back. Okay. I got paid back. Or she got paid back. So I remember one day just sitting on the edge of the swimming pool, and I was like, not even in the water, just sitting on the edge. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And the pool's right there, and I'm in my bathing suit, and I just can't get in, and I do not want to do it. And that's the reality of endurance training. And, so then you come back. And so, yeah, I got in the pool, and yeah, you got back running again. Why? What was it that got us back into it? And it's, you can like answer personally if you feel comfortable, but in a lot of times it's the goals why, it's the reason why, it's choosing for ourselves. I'm doing this for me. This is my reason. It matters to me. I matter, and so I'm going to do this. So I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about your why. Maybe both of them can share their why behind this. But I think being able to come back to our why is what helps in moments where we lose interest or have doubt or have fear. Being able to like come back to that little thing inside of us that's our motivation.
So, I mean, here I'll jump in. So for me, the why is, I suppose, twofold. It really boils down to two things. One, it's a challenge of, can I do it? So I feel like I've run, as I say, a couple of halves in my life, and I'm like, I need to take that next step. And there's this little bit of fear that's like, I can't do it. But I get so frustrated with myself because, believe it or not, I have done a few triathlons in my life. So I'm like, if I can do that for 6 hours at a time, and training for 3 disciplines, I'm sure I can get the headspace to be headstrong to train for a marathon. So the why goes to not proving to anybody else except to me of what is with this mental roadblock in your head where you are of an individual who is headstrong naturally. In everything I do, I've got a strong mind and I can overcome a whole lot of things. So for me, it's a personal battle on, let's get to the start line and hopefully to the finish line, but baby steps. Let's get to the start line and let's win this battle in your head, because irrationally, it just doesn't make sense. So that's my biggest why at the moment. It's like, I need to tick it off. No, I don't see myself becoming a seasoned marathon runner, but let's chat at the end. Maybe the bug bites. But for me, it's just this personal accomplishment that I just need to tick off. And when, if not now, when? I need to do it.
Yeah. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the quote, feel the fear and do it anyways. And you know, that's it. It's okay. You can be scared, but the only way you're going to get to the finish line is by starting, continuing, getting to the finish line. And I just love that the finish line for you is not just the physicality of pushing your body, but as you shared, it's also the mental piece and being able to just overcome. And you know, I just love that, and that is just going to be so powerful when you see that banner across when you're running up Bay Street and all the people on. It's like 500 meters left, 400 meters left. Like I just already feel goosebumps and joy for you, because it's just going to mean so much beyond just I did a marathon when you get to that finish. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Mandy. How about yourself, Joan?
I think for me, I think it's similar to Mandy. I just want to, I'm doing it for me. Like, I feel like I'm ready this year to attempt, to run a marathon. I feel like I want to do it for me. I also, I think, want to kind of show my kids, especially, like, I started running only a few years ago, right? Like, it's never too late to start. How old am I? I'm 42 years old. And like, I just want to show them it's never too late. And, you need, like, I'm doing this for me, and I want them to also be able to kind of say that one day that they're doing whatever it is that they want to do for them. So I think that's my biggest why.
Yeah.
I don't have a time goal. I don't have there's none of that. I just want to get to the start line like Mandy and hopefully finish.
Yeah. And you're worth it, right? You're worth it. So
Yes.
yeah, you are worth continuing to do the training, and you're worth getting to the start line, and you will get to the finish line. And sometimes it's that visualization, like I was saying with Mandy, of what that finish line looks like. And could you imagine when you have the medal and you've been training for 4 months and you're able to show your teenagers that, mom in her early 40s still cared about herself and had the energy and the drive to put herself forwards, even put herself first, even when it was, challenging and all these other things. And now you have this medal. Like, it just gives me goosebumps. I'm probably going to cry because I'm like such a literally heart on my sleeve all the time. Like, I'm just so happy for both of you to be able to have what this marathon signifies. And I think that's the thing with the group is everybody is bringing their own little piece of their own reason why. And so being able to connect online and through the optional runs in person where people can chat is really powerful. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, both of you.
Yeah, and Joan, I have an almost 14-year-old as well, and maybe this is a hot take, but I feel like it's important for our kids to see that we have a life outside of them and that we can do things like it's okay for us to take time for ourselves. It's not all about you all the time. And then also I wanted to say, Mandy, is that my first marathon was also take two. I did not make it to the start line of my first marathon either. I signed up with my running partner for the Medtronic Twin Cities Marathon, and I ripped a muscle and was on crutches and barely walking by the time I watched him run the race. And I cried like a baby. I cried when he went and picked up his kit. I cried when I watched him running. I cried when I saw him at the finish line. But you know what? When I went back next year and I ran it, that's the sauce, baby. And that is what you're going to have when you hit that finish line. It's like 3 seasons of training for this one moment, and it'll make it 3 times more special. And
I love that. 3 times more
3 times
special.
more special. And the
Yes.
other thing I made a note of when you're talking, Mandy, that I wanted us to maybe touch on just for a second is that you had said that there were points when you felt like you weren't having fun anymore. And I feel like when it comes to marathon training, that can maybe be dangerous. Maybe this is a hot take as well, but I feel like it can be dangerous because, like, yeah, there are going to be moments that are going to be total S in this next chunk of time, right? Like running all these long training runs is not always fun. It's sure not easy, right? Like there's gonna be moments that are garbage. And so for you to say you're not having fun, like do you guys understand what I'm saying?
It's relatable.
Yeah.
It's dark. It's
Yeah.
you and your mind for, depending on how people's training plans are going. More experienced people might be doing 3.5 hours as your max run. And it can get dark out there, like,
Yeah.
in your head, it can be tough and it can be uncomfortable. And then if you've got injuries and you've got family and you've got work all on
Yeah.
top, it can be tough. So what are some strategies, Mandy and Joan, if you've ever felt that way? And I can share on some ideas that I have too, when it's not fun, when it's just not fun. What do you do? How do you bring the joy back?
So for me, it was exactly that. It was trying to change things up a little bit. And definitely things do get dark, but it got to the stage where it wasn't like, oh, I'm out here and I'm not enjoying it. It was like an absolute dread of, I've got to go do this run. And that to me is different than, oh, I'm struggling outside and I've been running for 2.5 hours. I've lost interest. Like, I need to push on. This was like, I don't even want to leave the door to go start the run. So for me, that's where, as I say, like I did some self-reflection, but it was just the change of scenery. And that's for me where I do go back to running groups, is perhaps you do find that ad hoc group for the motivation to get that long run with. And that's how you start changing it. Because then you've got people with you, you're no longer out on your own. So there is that camaraderie. Or as simple as, I just normally train along Lakeshore. That can really become a bit monotonous. Like, yes, there's people to look at, traffic to look at, but it's what happens if you just take the subway up and you just change your starting location. So it's small things like that that are able to change it. And that for me, as silly as it sounds, but brings the fun back in, because there's new scenery to look at, there's new distractions, there's simple things, maybe change your Spotify playlist, find some new music to go down the road with. But yeah, so that's when I was saying, like, for me, the fun, yes, it's going to disappear at this stage, but you shouldn't dread exiting your house. And there's a big difference there.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. And I've done that too. I took the TTC all the way up to the very end. And my husband's like, well, where's the run today? I'm like, I'm just going to go to the end of the TTC as far as it'll get me. And then I'm just going to run home and, just changing things up. You also talked about music, changing up your playlist. I had this podcast that I would only listen to when I was running. So you do that too, Kirsten. So it was one that I just reserved for when I was running. And even like I loved it and I wanted to listen to it, but I was like, nope, only when you are running. Joan, what are some of the things that you do?
I think fairly similar. I tried a couple runs, sort of like on the trails a little bit, just again for a change of scenery. So that was really nice. It was, well, I was a little scared, if I'm being honest, like just running by myself. And though, I mean, I'm still in Toronto. I'm not like in the Shire somewhere, but it's still like the woods. But I think that was actually very helpful because for my daily sort of weekday runs, I just tend to run in like the same loop over and over again, just for comfort. Like I know where I am. It's usually still fairly dark outside, although summertime is better. But I think that change of scenery has been helpful. This is going to sound a little cheesy, but I'll say it anyways. I've been like injured so many times that I'm just grateful to be out there, that I actually can run. So I think just sort of keeping that, whatever I'm feeling like, I just want to sleep in. It's like, I actually can run today, and I'm gonna take that win, and I'll get out there. So
I've shared this
Yeah,
on the
it's
pod
the
before. So, oh, sorry. So sorry if you've heard, I don't know if you've heard this before, but I purposefully run past old folks' homes when I'm feeling unmotivated to remind myself how lucky I am to be moving, because I think of the number of people that are in that building that would give anything to be in my shoes. So that's a little trick I use sometimes when I'm feeling particularly unmotivated. Sorry, Heather, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Joan, just the language that you used in terms of approaching with gratitude. I don't have to do this. I get to do this. We get to run a marathon. Like, how cool is that, that we are in a space, in a situation, in a moment in our life that we get to run a marathon. We get to do this. I also love point to points. So I'll set like a destination that'll be like, the people in Toronto will know this, but like Craig's Cookies. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to run and I'm going to end at Craig's Cookies, or I'm going to run and I'm going to end at the 7-Eleven and I'm going to get a Slurpee and then I'm going to walk my way home. So, those sort of motivation, or there's like art in the city or there's something set up and I'm like, okay, I want to go see that new mural or that new statue or something like that. So then I'll, kind of use these points of attraction to add something a little bit interesting, give my run that extra purpose of, yeah, I'm putting on time on my feet, but I'm also doing something else, like checking out the art or getting a little snack. Mm-hmm.
I would not recommend doing what I did once when I was marathon training, which was running to go do an errand. And that errand was to pick up a bottle of vitamins. And so I picked up the vitamins and put them in my pack. And so then the whole way home, and I was like, oh my God, I have made a mistake. This was an error. But anyway, running for a Slurpee is much better than running for Advil, much smarter. Okay, so this is where we're at. Let's look to where we're going. So what are some things that you are thinking you might look to tweak as you move forward? Any changes you think you might be looking to make, or things that you want to make sure you're keeping consistent? So maybe Joan, I'll let you go first.
So this actually is an easy answer for me, is that I need to be consistent in my strength training, because not doing that was what got me injured. Even my PT was like, how come you're not doing your strength training? So yeah, I really need to commit myself. I don't know why. I can run, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week for long periods of time, and then strength training for 20 minutes is very, very difficult. But I know that I have to do it to support my running. So I always view it that way, because if I don't do it, then I get injured again and I can't run. So that's, I think, the sort of the major or the biggest tweak or commitment that I have to make for the second half.
So how do you see yourself making that happen?
Oh boy, I think just I think just what I said, knowing that, if I don't do it, then I probably won't be able to run, because then I'll get injured again, because it's been like left leg and then right leg and a left. So it's, it's been ongoing. So I think just getting into that mindset of like, okay, I just have to do it, because if I don't do it, then I can't do the thing that I love the most. So
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll share two things to that quickly. The one being I'm terrible for it as well. Super terrible. And so me and another girl have come to the decision that we text each other to say that, oh, I did my strength training today. So there's a level of accountability there. So maybe Heather would be your accountability partner, or one of your friends would be an accountability partner, just to say, yep, it's Tuesday and today was the day and I went. We do that. And the other thing I do, if this works for you, is that you and I are both in our 40s. And so I tell myself that if I want to be a strong runner when I'm 90, I have to put the foundation down now. Otherwise, I'm not going to get there. So the idea of thinking of that future me, of what I want as a runner in the future, take it or leave it, may work, may not. What about you,
Yeah.
Mandy?
That's great.
So mine's a little bit of a different one. It's mine really to tweak nutrition. I am not focused on that element. I have a terrible, well, it's also maybe put it out there, it's hot topic. I run fasted, which is not a good idea, because as distance increases, so does your hangriness. I can confirm this. So Heather, you talk about finding points of to run to. Mine is a chocolate croissant at a coffee shop as my location to finish. But no, on a serious note, it's really dialing in on nutrition. I know it's a weakness, and it's one thing running 21, you can generally get away with it. But as the distance has started picking up, it's how's that balance coming back into play? And building into the nutrition also feeds on, I'm terrible with hydration. So I don't like to stop every 3 kilometers and have a sip of water. So I've got into bad habits over the years, and it's now trying to unremedy that, because as the distance is increasing, the habits are really starting to rear their heads and present problems. So it's something I really am aware of, and I am starting, like, even on my little 10K runs, it's trying to take a goo or trying to take a water with me. Yes, it's probably not needed, but for me, it's more the behavior that I'm trying to adjust as opposed to the actual nutrition for those runs.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you know that it's not working for you. But it's all, I think if you can find something that you enjoy fueling with, which is there's so much out there, and there's, if you're on social media, so many influencers telling you this is what you should take, this is what you should take. But as you started this conversation with, it's so personal, and it's what works for you. And maybe it's, whether it's a bar, whether it's a gummy, whether it's a gel. I've tried to personally make the transition to more fueling with like real food versus fueling with gels all the time. Even moving away from gummies a little bit to, things like more bars, and that's what works for me. But being able to practice, so we're at the halfway point, your distance is only going to continue to grow. So this is really the time in your training plan where you want to be playing around with these things and finding what works for you. There's also like some interesting stuff going around with, your little electrolyte gummies, just really gummy bears. And can you maybe just have gummy bears and jelly beans, and that's kind of fun. And there might be somebody, a new nutritionist watching, going, no, don't say that. But it's that type of sugar, right, that we want to get back up. So there's definitely other things, but I always like to make like a little mix bag, and there's like some pretzels in there, and then I have like some Smarties because that's just what I want, and then some bars that are cut up. And so it's kind of like, okay, I'm in this. How am I feeling right now? Feeling like a little pretzel. Now I'm feeling like a little Smartie. To just chew along the way, eat along the way, versus with the gels. They're quick, they're easy, but you just get tired of them, and it's not fun. And I think that was another thing too, right? If you can find ways to keep it fun, and sometimes having little treats with your fuel helps to keep it fun.
I'm going to make a Heather Gardner trail mix because that sounds awesome. I am into that. Seriously.
Yeah, the pretzels with the
Yeah.
salt. You got to make sure they're salted pretzels, so you got some salt in there too.
Love it. Mandy, do you run with a water belt? Because I hate carrying a water belt. So that's a big barrier to me. I'm the same as you. I'm super terrible for running with water.
So I've started to learn to run with it because I really don't like it. Absolutely frustrates me, but it's something that I've started to have to get used to it. So, funnily enough, I don't really like it on me, so I'll actually rather hold like a squidgy one and fill it up. But it's just a preference. So once again, it's behavior I'm trying to adjust to. Also, like there's not always water tables, so it's, as I say, it's trying to implement best practice into my training runs. And clearly listening to me, I'm no expert on this. So anyone listening, we can all navigate it together. And just a pro tip to add to your trail mix, Haribos.
Oh, I'm into that. I really like that.
I'm team Haribo.
What's a hairy
The
bow?
little like jelly teddy babies, they
Yeah.
come in the gold packets.
Yeah, they
They
also
just,
make
you can have
Tang
like
Fast
like gummy
Sticks.
bears.
Yeah, gummy bears. But they
Gummy
also
bears.
make
Okay.
Tang Fast Sticks. Haribos, have you had those? Yeah, girl.
No.
Buy Tang Fast Sticks. They're delicious. It's like a little
So,
mix. It's a little built-in mix. It's a good
Yeah.
start.
Love that. Love
Yeah.
that. I am like, so see this black bin right here? This bin right here is filled with all running equipment. I'm like the Little Mermaid with gadgets and gizmos aplenty, and they are all handhelds, headlamps, everything. That's like the running gadget gizmo bin. So I've tried like running belts, running handhelds. You know, what's popular right now is actually the hydration vests. I'm sure you see it all the time along the waterfront. All the TikTok girlies are in their hydration vests. They're having a moment for sure. But again, it's finding out what works for you. What works for you. I went from a belt to a handheld. Now I'm using a handheld because I could also, like, there's extra storage in it. But it's what works. But now is the time to try and figure all that out.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Practice. Practice with whatever you're going to pick for sure.
yeah. Transparently for me, the vest, I don't enjoy it. It's a mental thing that I feel like I'm running with an extra kilogram or two on me because of the hydration. And obviously, yes, you need to consume it, but it's just for me, like additional material in the heat with the water. I'm like,
Agreed.
I don't need the extra weight to help me on this already difficult
I
journey.
completely agree. Like the fewer clothes, the better in the summertime. So to have something else on, I agree. I just put it in my hand, and it even like has a loop. I don't even need to hold on to it. I can loop it on my wrist, put it on my other wrist. It kind of comes up towards my elbow. Like I can just, it's a handheld, but it's kind of a corsage. Yeah. So
A little wristlet.
a wristlet. Doing a run, going to a formal dance.
Right? Whatever. Either one. Okay. So questions, fears. What do you guys want to talk about? Do you have any burning questions for Heather? Or Heather, do you have any questions for them? What do you guys want to talk about?
I have questions, but I'll let them go first. Unless they don't have any questions. Joan.
So for me, it's not so much the question. It's, I suppose it kind of opens a different topic, so we don't necessarily have to go down it. But I'm sitting here thinking, I'm sure there's some people that are listening to this in the future thinking maybe they want to run a 21, a 42, like, because if you look at the diversity of the Toronto Marathon Series, there's a whole varying different distance of runs. Yes, I understand this is tailored to the longer distance, but how as a community do we take away from the intimidation factor? So for me, running should be simple. It's a good pair of shoes, and that for me is like really your only solid investment. But I feel like with the concern around social media or the way to look, like, do people now feel that you're not a runner if you're not dressed in the correct gear? Or is that just a perception that I've come up with now, that there's such a fad around how you look versus when I started running, it was just make sure you have a good pair of shoes just to prevent injury, and the rest just kind of fits in. As I say, it's a bit of a different topic. Maybe it's just an observation I've noticed, but I feel like it's become a bit of like a fashion statement. Oh, I must have the hydration vest. Oh, I must have the correct like, and I'm like, how do we stop that? Or maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree and there's no need.
I like, I don't know if we need to stop it. I think a couple of things have come into play, being, social media, but also the post-pandemic running and run club boom. And so you have a lot of people who, whether they started running or have come out of the pandemic, not socializing, not being able to turn to bars and clubs, and instead have taken up running and, are now socializing in the run club. And then just seeing, oh, that's cool. That's what runners wear. Well, I want to fit in. So that's what I'm going to wear. And then it just kind of goes. And I think that's, probably something that existed before, but now maybe through social media we see it. You can kind of say that different run crews are kind of characterized by different sort of things. So there's run clubs in the city that, the runners are only ever in black. And like other run clubs where it's all the girls are in just black sports bras and black shorts and tall crew socks. And that's like the look, but they all are in the same look. And I'm sure people would have their same perception of Kardia if I were to say, like, you've got your, the whatever sunglasses, I don't want to be dropping all these names, but sunglasses and hats and all these sort of things. And you're like, oh yeah, that's like the Kardia look. That's the chicks look. Because it's how you socialize and who you're with and the people that you're with. And then you kind of get influenced by them. So I think it's possibly something that's already been there to different extents, but now it's just more in all of our faces. Yeah. And if it gets people running, I try not to think too much about stuff like that. I know what's comfortable for me, and I know both Joan and Kirsten, you were talking about your age before. I'm turning 45. At this point in my running career, if I think it looks cute, I'm going to wear it, and to each their own. And this is me. This is what I'm running in. You do you. I've even started running in, gasp, cotton tank tops. Not cotton. No, heaven forbid. But like, you know what? That's what I want to wear. And it's 5K and I'm in a cotton crop top and that's what I'm wearing. So, and guess what? My 5K still happened and the run still went and I still was able to do my training even in a cotton crop top. So, sometimes we get so caught up in all of that stuff, and it's what makes us feel comfortable and how we want to share and present ourselves and how we feel safe and how we feel confident. I think that's the most important part. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think,
I
Heather,
think
if I can build,
go
sorry,
ahead.
Kirsten.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I can build on that, exactly how you wrapped it up. And I suppose the way I was looking at it perhaps came across wrong was it's more of an intimidation. It's like, does some of it maybe scare off some of people wanting to enter the community? So hearing the cotton tank top, that's exactly me. And that's what I'm like, how do we keep that positivity and not that intimidation of, oh, I must have XYZ to join? And I'm worried it's just like, how do we keep that morale, that boost, that uptake that we're seeing? And it's how do we bring back that, if you've got your cotton top, we're just going to pick on it just because it's topical, that too is okay. There's nothing wrong. You don't need to look apart. Anyone can run. And I think that was more the view I was trying to take.
Yeah. It's, so looking through social media and us as the runners being like, okay, I'm going to join this group. I'm going to, go somewhere new. So we check online and being able to see. And, when I started Kardia 11 years ago, that was one of the big things that we wanted people to see from our social media is when you looked on our Instagram, you were able to see yourself. You were able to see somebody who was younger next to somebody who was older and next to different body shapes, and be able to be like, I am me and this is what I am and who I am and I can fit in. And I always recommend when people are trying to find new groups and they're doing a little bit of research to just look at the social media and decide, does this look like a place where I feel, do I like this vibe? Do I feel like I can fit in? Does it feel welcoming? Does it feel like it's aligned with what I'm looking for in my run group? And using that. So, hopefully groups are, being transparent and intentional with who they are and their goals. And then that helps folks looking to groups who maybe don't care so much about the flashiness and just want to train and want to do the work and want to have community, are able to find that.
Well, I don't want to take us too much over time because I've already taken you over time. We were too busy talking before we started. But I have a couple things I wanted to talk about before I let you go. And one of them is really just kind of thinking about more towards race weekend and wondering if, if there's anything in particular you're really excited for, or maybe there's something that you're afraid of, like, Joan, maybe it's the injury fear that you worry about. Like, what are you thinking about moving towards race weekend? Where is your head at?
I'll jump in, I guess. I think just, I think thinking about like the expo and getting my kit and things like that, I think will be very exciting. Right now, I just can't fathom the distance. When you're in a car, I always do that now. And I'm like, oh, like whatever, 40 kilometers towards like the next rest area. And then you're just like, holy moly, like it's ticking like this long to get there in a car. Like I don't know, in my head right now, I just cannot picture myself doing that distance in one go. So I think that's going to be my biggest sort of worry and fear at this time is like, okay, how am I going to be able to run that distance? Or, it just seems such a long distance to go through. But
Well, for sure. My biggest struggle is always, when you hit that last long run, right? And you think, this is only this isn't 42 kilometers necessarily, right? Your last long run, depending on the plan you're following, but isn't always that long. And then I think, am I going to have the gas to make up the difference? I mean, we always do, but you find it. But I mean, I always think, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Even if I've done it before, how am I going to do this? So I think that's super relatable and totally normal. Is there anything you're excited about? The expo?
I think just I've been to the expo for like previous 5Ks and things like
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
it's a great weekend. I'm excited that they're extending the weekend into like the Saturday 5K. I don't know. I'm just excited. I always love picking up like race kits and like seeing some people that I know and just being a part of it. I think that's always fun for me.
Yeah, it's always the hype zone in my mind, the expo, but before the race, it's the place where people meet each other and get excited and talk about their races, and just you get that bib in your hand. And I know, like, when I ran Chicago, I got that bib in my hand, definitely started to cry. Just me? No, okay, got it right. Get that bib in your hands, and you're like, oh my God, this is actually happening. What about you, Mandy? What are you excited for or fearful of moving into race weekend?
I think it's really the build up to the race as well as the race itself. So it comes with such a strong reputation that precedes it. So being relatively new to the country, a lot of people say, like you say, please recommend a race. And this one always gets listed as like the one you've got to do. So for me, it is the race, and I'm sure it will live up to what the public perception is and the expectation. And as I say, I don't doubt it, but it's just like everyone says it's phenomenal. The support's great. The city comes to life. So for me, it's just to see that in reality. And then honestly, in terms of the fear, it's if the work's done, it will be done. So it's not so much the fear around race weekend. For me, it's just the continuous build-up. So once race weekend's there, that's like, in a way, take a deep breath, because everything's been done to that point. And in any sport and anything in life, you can plan to such an extent, but you never know how that day is going to go. And you can't control that. So there's no actual fear on the day, as corny as that sounds, but it's due to the rationale of how you got there.
And the race is your celebration. Getting to the start line, getting to the finish line is the celebration of these 4 months, the celebration of, not getting injured, overcoming doubts, being part of a community. It's, the celebration of all the work that you've done, the sacrifices that you've made within your, work, family, personal life to commit to yourself. The race is the party. And as Joan said, this year in particular, it is going to be such a huge party with the 5K now on the Saturday. The expo is even longer. this is going to be Canada's largest marathon, and hopefully we'll be able to get more women than ever racing. I can say that at this point, so in 2022, when we first got the idea to start this program, there were only 28% of registrants self-identified as women. So then we did the panel, and we really tried to look at different ways that women, were being challenged to and weren't racing. In 2023, it was bumped up to 30%. And this year already, we're at 31%. So there's already more women running the marathon this year than has happened. And it's going to be Canada's largest marathon. So yeah, been a lot of
Guys,
pride.
you're
I
going to
know,
be part
exciting.
of history.
History.
Genuinely, you are going to be part of history. And that is such a huge and cool, exciting thing. Okay, so that leads me to the last thing I want to talk about. So I want you guys to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to imagine watching yourself coming up towards Nathan Phillips Square, coming up towards that big finish line, seeing yourself cross, getting your medal. And I'm going to cry on your behalf, getting your medal. And I want you to stand outside of yourself and imagine that you can see yourself and talk to yourself in that moment. What would you say to yourself at that finish line moment? No answer? You don't know what to say?
I was going to say probably 3 simple words.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
And that would be it. It's, yeah, simple. I think it would be a moment of shock. So possibly speechless.
So maybe that was your answer. Joan, what would you say to yourself?
I'll probably cry because I
Yeah,
cry,
right.
Anything and everything. But yeah, same with Mandy. I think I'm just gonna say I just did a freaking
Yeah.
42K.
Yeah, you did.
I don't know. That's ugh,
Yeah.
so exciting.
Heather,
Yeah.
have you ever had that moment where you thought about what you would tell yourself at a finish line like that?
Well, I remember my first finish line, and I cried, of course. I feel like not only crying at the finish line, crying multiple times during the race also is a reality. I don't think it's just me. You're running, and then I'm running with my sister, and then I see 2 people, and they're like, on the shirts, I'm running with my dad, I'm running with my daughter, crying. I see a person running for a charity, cry. I like there's so many moments on the race,
Yeah.
and you cannot run when you're crying. Personally, I've had no success. You have to just like get yourself back together, walk, take a couple deep breaths. Cause I think I haven't done scientific research, but from my experience, it is impossible to cry and run at the same time to race. So yeah, so crying for sure. And then, it took me the next day to be like, I'm doing this again. I remember when I finished, that wasn't the thoughts that I was having. I won't go too much into that side of it, but they were much deeper and darker. And I remember walking, and this woman was like, that was your first. She was so excited. And I was like the Tin Man. And so we were just trying to go. So my sister and I together, we didn't have any support. We didn't have any family. We only had each other. And we were both tin people walking down the street. And this woman was like, is it your first? Aren't you so excited? And we kind of like grunted, and were, not really able to communicate all the things we wanted to say, which, I could say them, but then we wouldn't be able to put this podcast out for everybody. But then it was the next day. I was like, let's find another one. We got to do this again. So yeah. But elation, joy, pain, all the emotions,
all the things. Yeah. Well, I am hoping that we are able to bring this group back together. We're looking to have a shakeout run race weekend leading into the expo, and then having us all back on the stage again together to talk about how the rest of things went Are you ready to go? And hopefully we'll have a bunch of other ladies join us at the expo stage. We can have this conversation again. And I have my fingers crossed that I can be at the finish line and catch you guys as you come in. And then I'm going to say words to you, which would be amazing because I have memories of one year I ran the Ottawa Marathon, and it was the worst half marathon I've ever run time-wise. I walked a lot of it. And then I got to the finish line and there was a woman standing there and she was just crying into her hands. And I was like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, are you okay? Are you hurt? Like, can I help you somehow? And she said, I just ran my first marathon. And I hugged her and I said, I'm so proud of you. This is such a special moment. And I always think of that as how lucky I was to be part of her moment. And I hope I get to be part of yours too. That would be amazing. So now that I've got us all crying, thank
Now
you.
we're all crying.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you all so much for making time to do this tonight. We're going to get together again. We're going to hang out again. We're going to have some more conversations. We're going to talk about how the rest of those long runs went and dish on all the things. So thank you guys all so much for making time for this.
Only a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.